I'm Mike Graham, and this is Talk TV, and we are in conversation today with Peter Tatchell, human rights campaigner, because we're going to talk today about the World Cup. Peter, welcome to Talk TV. It's the first week of Qatar 2022, and possibly it's been called the most controversial World Cup of all time. It probably is, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that Qatar was given the World Cup in the first place was mired in controversy with allegations of backhanders and corruption and bribery. And ever since, FIFA and Qatar have made all kinds of promises and assurances, many of which have not been kept,
Right.
Including, for example, compensation for migrant workers who have died on the job.
Yeah.
Many of the families are still waiting for compensation years later.
Yes. I mean, Qatar is in a part of the world which is very different to what you and I are used to. I know that you've been campaigning in many countries over time, from the African continent to Russia to now the Middle East. I mean, is there any room for those who say, what business is it of ours, what people like Qatar do in their own countries and how they run them?
Well, of course, FIFA has human rights as part of its core statutes. So on that basis alone, it should have never given Qatar the right to host the World Cup.
Right.
On top of that, I would never seek to impose Western values on Qatar or any other country, but I would ask them to uphold the principles of universal human rights. Qatar is a member of the United Nations, and membership of the UN requires to uphold the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which guarantees equal treatment and protection against discrimination for everyone.
Yes.
Now, clearly, Qatar is not fulfilling its obligations as a member of the UN, and moreover, I'm supporting the many brave Qataris who are striving for democracy and human rights. They want that change, and I'm supporting them.
I was told the other day that there's a very small minority of people in Qatar who are actually Qataris, that most of the people who live there are from somewhere else, not necessarily poor migrant workers, but they could be successful business people, they could be, journalists, they could be real estate entrepreneurs, all sorts of things. I mean, as far as the Qatari sort of national situation is concerned, there's not that many Qataris in Qatar.
You're right. And of course, even so, even most Qataris don't have any say in their own country because this is a royal dictatorship.
Right.
There's no genuinely free and fair elections. There's no human rights as enshrined in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So Qatari people themselves are shut out of power and shut out of the enjoyment of the rights and freedoms which Qatar is supposed to uphold.
And what did you make of the football teams? Because when the games got underway, the first thing that happened was Qatar played Ecuador. There was a goal scored against Qatar, which was immediately disallowed, even though nobody could work out quite why. But then we had the controversy with the Love Armband. 7 countries wanted to wear it. England, in fact, had said that they would wear it in defiance of FIFA anyway. They then sort of, unfortunately, seemed to lose their principles as soon as they were threatened with a yellow card. My belief is that if they hadn't made such a big thing of it, it might have been better. But having said that they were going to stand up against the rulings that the Qataris were going to make, surely they should have stuck with that.
Well, I don't blame the players, the teams. The villain in the piece is FIFA. They have known about this One Love armband for months and have battered away all inquiries, all approaches by the football teams involved. In essence, that One Love armband was a pretty weak gesture anyway. It wasn't really a genuine rainbow flag, and I'm sure that most fans would have not noticed it, or if they did, not known what it meant. So, the fact that the armband is gone, it's really as a result of blackmail and bullying by FIFA. FIFA has basically blackmailed and bullied the teams to threaten them. If you wear this armband, you'll be booked. You'll face the risk of being sent off the pitch. And that's incredibly unfair, particularly to do it at the very last moment when they've known about it for so many months.
Yeah.
So, I can understand why a lot of people feel angry at the team for caving in. But of course, it'd be very unfair for the fans, for the teams to suffer a big penalty
which is
and
why,
end up losing a match.
Yeah, which is why I think it was a bit misguided, I think, of the teams to say that they were going to do it in the first place, because, as you say, it's not going to change anybody's mind. It's not going to make a huge difference. To me, it was a little bit more about wanting to look as if they were doing the right thing, and sure enough, when the time came to do the right thing, they didn't.
Yeah, but I'd commend them for having a go and wishing to do it. But I would say that now the One Love armband is gone, there is something that all the team captains can do, which is not against FIFA's rules, and which would reach an audience of hundreds of millions. And that is just devote 30 seconds of their post-match press conference to speak out for the human rights of Qatari women, LGBTs, and migrant workers. That would be far more effective than the armband, and would really, I think, make a very strong stand of solidarity with those Qataris who are suffering and who want change.
And of course, there's a lot of things that football fans can do. They do. I mean, we were hearing today about a lot of Manchester United fans, whenever they scored a goal, would use the celebration shouting to talk about the Glazers and why they didn't want them, because they knew that would be covered then on every sort of, highlight show. You'd hear that chant. Do you worry, though, that if people were to do that the Qataris might retaliate in some way?
Well, I think if it was done en masse, it'd be very difficult. And we've certainly seen Iranian supporters hold up those banners, women, life, freedom, to express solidarity with the very heroic democracy protesters in Iran. They haven't been penalised. The Qataris haven't liked it. FIFA hasn't liked it. But there's simply been too many of them to do anything. So there's safety in numbers. And I would praise any football fan who seeks to raise a human rights issue, whatever it is. It's the right place to do it.
Well, we understand that Saudi Arabia are going to bid for 2030. I don't think many people would bet against them getting that, unfortunately, for those of you who would like to campaign for human rights for everyone.
Well, of course, Saudi Arabia, like Qatar, is unfit to host any World Cup based on its poor human rights record, and also sporting discrimination. Now, FIFA has said from the get-go that discrimination will not be tolerated at the World Cup. But there are 7 competing nations, including Qatar, that have a total criminalisation of homosexuality. If a star footballer from any of those 7 nations either came out as gay or was exposed as gay, he would be more likely to be jailed than selected to play for his national team. Now, that is discrimination. It's against FIFA's rules, but FIFA is allowing it to happen.
Yes, because FIFA is an organisation which at the very best of times could be regarded as hypocritical.
Hypocritical and corrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, 16 of the 22 FIFA executives who were involved in that vote to give Qatar the World Cup have been investigated, convicted, or reprimanded on charges of bad conduct. 16 out of 22.
Yeah.
This is a monstrous organisation.
Well, even Sepp Blatter said he was a mistake. And I mean, coming from him, that's pretty interesting, I would say.
Well, he can now say it's a mistake, but he was fully aware of the human rights issues when Qatar was given the World Cup, as with the rest of the FIFA executive. In fact, afterwards they said, after they'd voted for Qatar, they said, football in Qatar will be an agent for change, acknowledging that things needed to change. And there have been no changes in terms of LGBT plus rights, no changes in terms of women's rights, and patchy marginal changes in terms of migrant workers. It's true that the Khalifa labour system has been reformed, the law has been changed, but the practice is very different. There are still migrant workers who complain of unpaid wages, stretching back weeks or even months, being forced to live in slum, overcrowded hostels, and being refused permission to change jobs to escape abusive employers. So clearly, the labour reforms have been very, very inadequate.
And that, of course, is the World Cup 2022 in Qatar. Peter Tatchell, thank you very much indeed. The campaign goes on, no doubt. Let's see if anything's changed by the end of the tournament. This is me, Mike Graham, on Talk TV.